Since the release of the Elden Ring DLC, there's been a lot of talk about Miquella and his character and intentions. Is he good or evil? Childish or a manipulative genius? Was throwing away Cintrina a good thing or a bad thing? For this video, I wanted to explore Miquella's dialogue and endings from the perspective of the teachings of Buddha. Now, why the heck would I do that? Well, you might have seen the Garrulus Gold Mask's video, Miquella's Great Rune is Mistranslated, and this got me thinking about a bunch of things. One of the main points of his video is that in Japanese, the translation states Miquella attempts to go beyond causality. The connection to the law of causality and regression is very interesting, because this connection implies that there's an Eastern philosophical take occurring here, which Garrulus Goldmask astutely observes in his own video. He makes a lot of incredible observations on how this implies the mechanism by which Miquella attempts to actually cease suffering, and finally refers to Miquella's rune as a mistranslation. What does this mean exactly, however? Because I would argue that this is translated and localized perfectly, but let's explore the concept, shall we? There is a concept, but it is more akin to a law of reality that is shared across a number of Eastern religions, including Buddhism and Hinduism, which is what the principles of the Golden Order are based on, called dependent origination or dependent arising. Essentially, it states that all things arise in dependence upon other things, or more specifically, if it exists, that exists. This ceases to exist, that also ceases to exist. There are two types of this concept, which roughly translates to with the grain or forward conditionality, and its reverse against the grain or reverse conditionality, which we can essentially ascribe to the law of causality and regression respectively. But on an even deeper level, this concept goes into what is essentially a list of 12 links or phenomenon which give rise to all suffering, or what they call dukkha, within Samsara, which is the process of rebirth. The reversal of the causal chain is explained as leading to the cessation of rebirths, and thus the cessation of suffering. In the Rig Vedas, which I mentioned in my last video, this is called pratya or samutpada. Sorry, I probably butchered that, but anyway. Quickly on rebirth, this is a huge theme that honestly deserves its own video, but there's a load of items that refer to this theme. One that stands out to me is the silver tear husk. The silver tear makes mockery of life, reborn again and again into imitation. Perhaps one day it will be reborn a lord. This item directly references the cycle of rebirth and the possibility of escaping it by becoming a lord, or in this context becoming a Buddha and escaping causality. How does one achieve this? It is by achieving Nirvana to Buddhism or moksha to Hinduism respectively. Now moksha is different to Nirvana. The main difference is that moksha is the realization of the soul's oneness with the Brahman, or the creator god. Nirvana is the realization of the lack of self, or the blowing out, as it literally translates to. There is a connection here to Nirvana and the process of becoming a god in Elden Ring. To do this in Elden Ring, one must divest themselves of everything entirely. This is essentially the same as achieving Nirvana, and I've seen a lot of people say, Miquella is naive or Miquella is evil. This translation would imply that Miquella has a profound understanding of the human condition and the systems of the cosmos. He is essentially an enlightened being or Buddha, or sage, if you will, and wishes to liberate all beings from the cycle of endless suffering and rebirth. Mechanically, Miquella would replace the law of causality with the law of kindness, or lack of causality entirely. Now you can see that this is getting complicated for someone who isn't well versed on traditional Eastern philosophy. Now what was the point of all of this? Well, very good question, my intrepid, astute viewers. This was all a trick to make a point about translation and localizations. There's two processes at play here when we as a community talk about mistranslations. Translating a game as vast with references to philosophy, art, science, medicine, astrology, astronomy, and many other things as Elden Ring incorporates into its game is not an easy task. There is a hell of a lot of things and concepts which make sense in Japan and other places in the world which literally don't translate. One must always consider localization. In the Gorillaz Goldmask video I referenced earlier, he suggests that there is a bunch of mistranslations that were changed, such as the Godslayer's Greatsword and Rani's ending. Now fundamentally I believe that this is not the same thing. This is not a mistranslation, it is a localization, where the Godslayer's Greatsword was literally mistranslated because it was meant to be a reference to the Glowmine Queen. Miquella's Great Rune is localized the way that it is because Western audiences can instantly translate the original sin motif in their minds, where the implication of beyond causality isn't a motif that we are exposed to in the West. If I'm being perfectly honest, I think the community as a whole puts way too much onus on non-professional translations and localizations. This isn't to say that it's not worth investigating, because it absolutely is, but we need to stop with the silly localization team mistranslates Elden Ring again narrative. Translating and localizing a game as vast as Elden Ring is not easy, and frankly, it's impossible essentially, and as such I think they've done an excellent job. Anyway, I'm sorry for tricking you all into my rant about translations and a little bit of Buddhism, but here we are. Always remember to embrace the whole of it.